Hello and welcome. It's an absolute pleasure and delight to have you join us for this time of celebration. My name is Barbara Armstrong and I'm the Head of Business Engagement at MSDUK. This event seeks to really challenge gender bias and inequality in the particular areas of leadership, business and entrepreneurship. I think, as you'll know, for celebration of International Women's Day this year, the theme is Choose to Challenge. And the theme is reminding us all that a challenged world is an alert world, and that from challenge also comes change. Today's going to be a really exciting event. There are some inspirational women that we're going to hear from, and you're going to have an opportunity as well to pose some questions for them and for this to be interactive a little later on. Next slide, please. Before we kick off, I just want to outline for you the agenda, which hopefully you have already received. So when I finish my welcome, I'll be introducing our Chief Executive, Mayank Shah. Then we'll go on to the keynote address. Apologies. We will go on to 3 spotlights, and then there will be a keynote address followed by a panel discussion, and we'll end with a vote of thanks. So that's our agenda for today. But before we go into all of that, I'd really like to express our sincere thanks to the event sponsors for today. They are AstraZeneca and Google. Thank you very much for your support. It's very much appreciated. And also, I'm hoping that most of you will by now have received a small gift from us, which was actually sponsored by one of our ethnic minority businesses, BX Merchandise. I think you will agree it is a beautiful gift, and I hope that you're going to be using it today, if you've received it already, to be taking a few notes. So thank you very much, BX Merchandise. The last thing we'd ask you to do is, we know that everybody is always on social media, so we would ask you to remember to post about your experience here. Do tag us so that we can reshare your posts. And as you can see on the slide there are some hashtags that you can use as well in reference to this event. Thank you very much. So now I would like to introduce Ready to go when you are, Mayank.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So great to see you all today as we celebrate the International Women's Day by recognizing and hearing from some of the most inspiring women from ethnic minority communities. Got an incredible lineup of women entrepreneurs and corporate leaders that have broken those glass ceilings and achieved inspiring success through their determination and hard work. This year's IWD theme is Choose to Challenge, calling on us all to think critically about our own thoughts and actions and how we can better promote gender equality and celebrate women's achievements. Today's event is one such way to celebrate. And yes, it is an event to celebrate. Hearing from these incredibly successful women and get inspired by their stories, how they choose to challenge the status quo and became role models for all of us. As G.D. Anderson said, feminism isn't about making women strong. Women are already strong. It's about changing the world, changing the way the world perceives their strength. It is important that we focus on addressing gender inequality with full force and commitment, and we all need to work together to achieve that. Next slide. Recently, MSDUK last year commissioned the biggest ever research on economic contribution of ethnic minority businesses to the British economy. And one very, very depressing stat that came out was the report also came out with top 100 minority businesses in the UK. And only 3 out of those 100 have a female founder. But what is optimistic is the report goes on to talk about the key strengths that ethnic minority community brings: drive to succeed, determination, and diversity of perspective. Every single woman speaking at today's event have these strengths. Let us all get inspiration from their success, because we are strongest when we cheer each other on. And I'm really delighted to make a big announcement today. We at MSDUK are committed to support growth of women entrepreneurs from ethnic minority communities. And from today, our certification program will recognize businesses fully owned by women entrepreneurs through a new logo, which will mention MSDUK certified ethnic minority woman-owned businesses. And this is in recognition of a hugely talented and inspiring pool of entrepreneurs that we have, women entrepreneurs that we have within our network. It reminds me at the moment, one of the things that's 13 years since MSDUK was launched in 2006. And sorry, it's 15 years. And I have led a team of inspiring, hardworking women throughout those 15 years. And really proud that the team today at MSDUK is as diverse as it can get. We have 8 incredible women that are part of our growing team. And this week, one of them is celebrating 13 long years at MSDUK. I'm sure you all must have come across Malvika. She has been my pillar of strength. I know she must be looking at me now, thinking about and staring at me. But for me and my wife, she's a family. And she has been a passionate advocate of MSDUK, has made a huge contribution to the success of MSDUK. So Malvika, you are a star and deserve a huge round of applause. I also have 3 incredible friends of long time today speaking at the event. Kanchana, India, Janvi. You all have been part of this family for so many years, and your support means a lot to me and to MSDUK. It's an honor to have you speak at this session, and I look forward to get inspired. Have a great afternoon, all.
Thank you very much, Mayank. That was a really great start to what I know is going to be an inspiring, exciting, and energetic event. And with that in mind, we have 3 excellent spotlight speakers. And what we mean by that is that we have 3 women who are going to share their experiences and their stories briefly. And then that will be followed by our keynote speaker for today. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the first of our 3 spotlight speakers. And I will read each of their profiles because they are such amazing women that I don't want to leave anything out. So forgive me for reading. So our first speaker is Shola Kay. Shola is an award-winning speaker and an author who has spent the first part of her career in IT consultancy in the USA and in the UK. Her experiences as a minority, Black, female, and she says introvert. Having met her, I'm not so sure about that, but she says she's an introvert, has led to an interest in learning to create inclusive workplaces with open, supportive communication. Shola went on to become a professional performer, appearing on stages around the world. I do not doubt it. Today, she blends her background both in the workplace and as an entertainer to share a clear, effective communication framework that helps people work better together. These are delivered in a high impact, engaging, and entertaining style. And I know that's exactly what we're going to get now from Shola. Shola, over to you. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And I'm really excited to be here sharing this momentous occasion with everyone in the audience. And as Barbara said, I'm lucky enough to work as a keynote speaker, and I typically speak to audiences from corporations to universities. And I'm very passionate about empathy in the workplace and also inclusive leadership, and how can we make our workplaces more welcoming to everybody. And I absolutely love what I do. And even through COVID, which has been so tough for so many of us, it's been a wonderful opportunity to speak virtually, and as a result to reach much wider audiences than I ever would have done. But if I go back to the beginning of my career, it certainly wasn't always a time of happiness for me. And I, like most people, wanted to do well. I was keen to learn and I was enthusiastic. And I started out my career after getting a master's degree in the USA. I joined a tech consulting company in America. And I just thought, well, if I do the right thing, keep my nose clean, work hard, then success should be a given. But as we know, as women and also as minorities, things don't always work in our favor. And I am an introvert, Barbara. And particularly early on in my career, I didn't have a lot of confidence, as many of us don't when we start out. And so in a consulting role, I actually kept quite quiet. I was watching, trying to learn, trying to sort of learn the ropes before I made more of an impact in that particular role. And I remember one day I was asked to go to my boss's office, and I went in. This was a small company, around 50 employees. And I went into the managing director's office, and he was there with my manager, and also with the sort of vice principal of the company. And I thought, well, what's going on here? And my manager said, well, Shola, we feel you're not doing particularly well at the moment. We feel that you're struggling a bit. And there'd been no developmental feedback whatsoever. I hadn't heard anything about this before. And what they said to me was, well, Shola, we're going to put you on probation. We feel that you, at the moment, you're not doing what it takes to be successful at this job. And as somebody, as I say, who'd always wanted to work hard, always had worked hard, keen to do well, this was a complete shocker to me. And because also I was working in the States, it meant that I had to have a visa that was attached to my work. So if I had lost that job, I would also have had to leave the country in disgrace. So no pressure. But fortunately for me, with the help of a female colleague, she ended up coming into work early, giving me a bit of support. And as a result of that, I managed to stay in that role for several more years. But that was my first brush with how tough the workplace can be. And it wasn't until later that I realized that minorities and women in particular are assessed differently than men. There's something called prove it again bias, where if you're a woman or a minority, typically you will not be promoted, you will not be given the benefit of the doubt. You have to prove yourself first. Whereas with sort of white men, typically, they will be promoted based on their potential. So they keep getting promoted, whereas for the rest of us, we're on this treadmill, and then we get the promotion eventually, and etc., etc. So anyway, I stayed in this role for a few more years, and then eventually I moved back to the UK. And in the UK, I took on a job as an account director, and I was running a team of about 12 people. Now, it was clear that at this company, it was quite dysfunctional, people were unhappy. So I wanted to try and make sure that everybody felt they belonged. And in doing so, my employer thought that I wasn't spending enough time on client projects. Again, no feedback. This is typically something that happens in particular to women of color, where their managers, who may be white guys, don't feel comfortable having those developmental feedback conversations with them. So the end result is that these women get blindsided when they get their performance feedback, whether that's every 6 months, every year. But suddenly this shocking feedback comes, and it's shocking because they weren't given that developmental feedback along the way. So once again, after 6 months, I'm called into the boss's office. And this is the girl that always tried so hard at school, wanted to be top of the class, called into my boss's office, sat down. This time, it wasn't even probation. It was, Shola, this is your last day of employment. You are fired. We feel that you're not able to speak up enough in meetings. You're not giving enough value. We have to let you go. So as you can imagine, I was dejected, demotivated, out. I will never work for a corporation again. It's over. And so I had to move out of the flat I was in, had to live with my little sister. Things really changed for me. But what I got through that is I started to do a lot of personal development work. And I realized the importance of authenticity and of doing it your way. And I realized that as a quiet person, it doesn't mean to say that your voice should not be heard, but maybe you express yourself in a different way. So I ended up becoming a performer. I went back to my sort of childhood dream of singing, took singing lessons, and ended up sort of doing jazz and Motown singing for a while. And through that, I got used to being in front of audiences, speaking up, etc. And I decided I would write my first book, which was about being a communicator and a speaker, but giving people multiple tools to do it their way. So instead of saying, well, you've got to put your hands here and your face here and do it like this, it was more of a pick and mix so that anybody would feel empowered. Okay, yeah, I can do these things. That's how I'm going to be successful as a communicator, whether at work or beyond. So after writing this book and getting a bit more confidence around speaking up, there was something in me that kept saying, look, Shola, you need to be a speaker. You need to share your voice and your story. And one day I had a life coach at the time, and I was in John Lewis in Oxford Street at the top floor, and we were having a coaching session. And I remember I was crying. And my coach, Rashid, said to me, Shola, why are you crying? And I said, well, look, I want to be a speaker. And he said, okay, well, who do you want to speak to? I don't know. What about? I don't know. But what he did then was magical. And I think this is something that we can all do, because we can all listen to the hopes and dreams of the people around us and take them seriously. Now, Rashid knew about my background as somebody who wasn't a particularly confident speaker, who'd been fired and put on probation. He could have said, look, love, forget this speaking dream, just do something easier. But instead he said, bring your diary, bring a calendar, and get a notebook. Let's make a plan for that to happen. And within 18 months of that day, I'd taken an international award in public speaking, and I've got the top mark internationally. And I'm really passionate about people not feeling that they're down and out early on in their career and having lots of opportunities to learn, to grow, to try new things, but in an authentic way for them. Because when we're authentic, it's like we cannot be shaken, we cannot be toppled, because we are grounded in who we are. So my advice to anybody out there who's perhaps struggling in the workplace or feeling that they need to challenge is, first of all, figure out what your voice is. Who are you authentically? We don't all have to challenge by being the loud person at the front of the protest. Every voice is necessary, whether it's a whisper or whether it's a roar. So I think the first thing is to figure out who you are. What do you care about? And how can you personally take a stand and make a challenge in your own way? And so for me, as I wrap up now, for me, it's about helping workplaces become more empathetic, helping leaders and managers understand the power of listening to others, not seeing them as down and out before they even have a chance to prove themselves, but actually trying to get to know what that individual, what their skills and talents are, so that everybody can shine and everybody can belong. So I want to thank you today for having me. I'm not sure how many minutes I spoke for, hopefully not too long, but my message is all of you, figure out who you are, what's your authentic self, what is your voice, and then get that voice out there. And whether it's a roar, whether it's a whisper, get it out there. So thank you so much, Barbara. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Shola. Honestly, the comments in the chat from all of the things that you have said, you really do need to check them. So many women who are saying they've had similar experiences, your story chimes with theirs. That yes, I think knowing that you were able to choose to challenge and turn things around has been such an inspiration already to people. One person even said, will you mentor me? So I'd check that out if I were you. So thank you very, very much for that excellent and inspiring contribution to today. We really, really appreciate that. Thank you, Shola. Now, I'd like to introduce our next speaker who is in the spotlight. Today, this is Sarah Ahmed. Sarah has nearly 20 years experience in strategic sourcing, covering local, regional, and global roles. She started her career at Credit Suisse, covering general service sourcing before moving onto various marketing sourcing roles within investment banks and professional services firms, notoriously difficult places as a woman. Sarah also transitioned into IT project management during her time at Linklaters, where she gained her Prince 2 qualification. In 2020, she relocated to Hong Kong with UBS to head up the North Asia sourcing team, covering a number of regional sourcing categories, including IT, HR, and benefits, travel and corporate services. Sarah relocated back to London and joined Bristol Myers Squibb in 2016 as the head for UK and Ireland strategic sourcing and procurement across the commercial business. And the other thing that I should say about Sarah is she recently joined the board of MSDUK. So we know it's going to be fantastically inspirational to have you working alongside all of the team at MSDUK. But we'd love to hear your story of how you chose to challenge. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks very much, Barbara. And hearing you say that reminds me I must take that 20 years out, because that ages me so much. I'm like, wow, have I really been working for that long? So look, thank you very much. And I really just want to thank the MSD UK team for inviting me to speak today. They've set me a really tough challenge, and I really had to reflect a lot, because I realized that I've been asked to speak in the past about procurement, how I got into the industry, what it was like living in Hong Kong, but never really about my challenges as a woman of colour. And so I really started reflecting, and I got a good old-fashioned piece of pen and paper out to start thinking about it. And I'm a really busy mum, as I'm sure a number of you are. I've got 3 young children, as well as a husband, and you can probably guess which one takes up the most of my time, but it doesn't actually leave that much time for me. And so I quite enjoyed this challenge, because I thought I really have to shut myself off, really think about the things that I've been through in my life, and start to reflect on them and the impact that they've had on me as well. So as I started to write these challenges down, I realized they don't stop. I think life is just full of challenges. So I left Afghanistan during the Russian invasion. I arrived in England when I was 7 years old. I'd never attended any type of schooling at all. And that meant I was totally illiterate when I arrived, which also then meant I didn't have friends for quite a while, because I just couldn't communicate with them at school. It also reminded me of the struggle of being raised a strict Muslim at home, but wanting to fit in with the Western culture. And those challenges just take me up to my teens. But I think when I reflect on my biggest challenges as a woman of colour, away from the corporate world, which I will talk about in a bit, but it's really been that cultural fit. So when my parents moved to London, they tried really hard to give us the best upbringing, as any parent does. But they also had to meet these cultural pressures of moving their children from a very Muslim country to a predominantly Christian country. And I can remember missing out on sleepovers, parties, hanging out with my friends, because my parents were so worried about losing us to that Western culture. And now that I'm a parent, I can fully appreciate, the situation that they've been in. And so I did actually apologise to my mum for the number of times I threw my toys out of the pram. In my defence, I did have 3 brothers and I was the only girl, so that's my excuse. I'm sticking to it. But I thought I'd be able to manage that cultural fit better as I got into my teens. But if I'm really honest, I struggle sometimes even with it now. And it's impacted actually a lot of my life decisions, which have, changed my life. And I can't say if it would have been for the better or not, but it certainly held me back, for example, for the university that I wanted to go to. I wanted to go to one outside of London, but that would have meant leaving home and moving out. And also it's reflected in sort of some of the career decisions I made. I had opportunities to work abroad much sooner, but it wasn't something that my parents were comfortable with. And it also impacted who, when I got married to my husband. So the reason for me to why I eventually was able to achieve those things. So when it comes to my husband, you have to think about a Afghan Muslim woman marrying an agnostic Black Jamaican, which is a whole story on its own, but then also finding ways to overcome those challenges. And I think, you know, being able to work abroad, being able to marry the man that I wanted, I was able to do that because I just don't give up. I just think it's a challenge and I can find a different path to really achieving what I want. And I'm sure if you ask my husband, he would just say, I'm super stubborn and I keep going until I get what I want. And those are the evenings that he eats dinner on his own. I've seen a number of my Asian friends do exactly the same thing, really meet their objectives. And that really makes me feel so warm inside to know that there are a number of people that don't let these challenges stop them, but they will find different paths to it. And it reminds me constantly of not giving in or giving up. So I said I'd also talk about sort of challenges in my professional career. And again, I started reflecting on the different industries I've worked in. So Barbara mentioned investment banking that has its own reputation, to professional services, and then now with Bristol Myers Squibb. If I'm totally honest, I'm not sure, and this is a question that's been asked of me a few times, I'm not sure if being a woman of colour has held me back professionally. And I guess that's because it's not really been blatant to me. And I've always been in, no matter what the situation, I've always been a cup half full as opposed to a cup half empty type of person. So even in a previous role, after a very short period of time, I remember being promoted above male colleagues into a senior position. And I remember their faces when they heard the decision and they were trying to figure out, well, how did you give it to her as opposed to one of us? And it was quite a challenging time for me to then take on the management of that team. But again, I just saw it as an opportunity. I thought, I can bring value to this and to these individuals. So let me show them that I can do that. And I've applied that in so many different situations. So I love changing perceptions of what people think I may or may not be capable of doing. I've also learned the power of choosing the right company. So I've worked in quite a few different companies. And it was really only after I joined Bristol Myers Squibb that I appreciated what it's like to work for an organization that really does put its people first. And that can be our patients that we serve or our employees. And we put that at the core of everything we do. And it's made such a difference to how I feel about working for such an organization as well. And in previous industries where I felt that there is a glass ceiling for women, particularly women of color, I don't feel that at BMS, which is why I'm so proud to work there. And it's also, you know, no surprise that they were awarded the best place to work for women because of all the different provisions they put in place. And so it's really made me think about when you're choosing an organization to really make those interviews two ways. It's not just about them hiring you, but it's also about you choosing the right organization for you. So in interviews, delve into the organization, find out what do they stand for, what provisions do they have in place to ensure that there's equality, that they stamp out discrimination and bias. It was also at BMS that I attended a management course that I found super helpful, and I often share it with friends in certain situations. And the course was all about controlling the controllable. So it sounds weird, but it makes logical sense because I apply it all the time and it really, really helps me. I recently went for a job interview and I had to convince the hiring manager that I was the best candidate for the role and that I wanted the role to be in the UK because I didn't want to relocate for it. And I remember at a period I was getting a bit stressed about, you know, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? If it doesn't happen, what should I do? What are my options? And then I told myself, well, I'm not in control of the decision, but what I am controlling of is preparing for that interview and putting together a solid business case. And I'm so pleased that that worked out and I'm now transitioning into a global marketing procurement role as well, which I'm really, really excited about. And I had the same situation at home with my eldest daughter. She went for her acting exam recently, and in her first go, she got top marks. And so she was really getting stressed about, well, I want to get distinction again, Mummy. I really want a distinction. Do you think I will get it? And I said to her, you can't control the decision, sweetheart. You can't control what the examiner will give you. But what you can control is the amount of preparation time you put in, the amount of practice you put in to ensure that you do the best that you can on the day. So control what you can control. Don't stress about the other stuff. And in summary, I hope I haven't taken up too much time. I always say, keep the glass half full. I just think the world is such a rosier place when we live like that. Don't give up. Just find a different path. You will get there. And control what you can control. If I can make it, I am sure you can as well. Thank you very much.
Sarah, two amazing bits of advice there alongside such an inspirational story. Thank you so much. I think I will always remember control the controllable and don't give up. Maybe a third. You said you're a glass half full person, but I think from what you were saying, you're definitely a glass full person. You're always finding the positives in every situation. And I think the people that have been on this webinar today will feel that what they will take away from listening to you, as well as your inspirational story, which wish we had an hour of, it's also that tenacity and determination. So thank you so much, Sarah. That was absolutely excellent. Thank you. Some great comments for you in the chat. Check those out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will move on now to our third and final spotlight speaker. Now, Dr. Elsa Zikeng isn't able to be with us today, so we have got a recording for her, but I'm still going to share her amazing story because there are young women that are really doing some very inspirational things as well. And we wanted to make sure that we also represented at every level the women in this network. So I'll tell you a little bit about Dr. Elsa. She finished her PhD in infectious diseases and global health. She received the Queen's Ebola Medal for service in West Africa after volunteering with the World Health Organization during the biggest outbreak in West Africa. She joined the executive team of a startup called Job Seekers, and Job Seekers is a career platform mitigating unconscious bias at the sourcing and screening stage of recruitment. She advocates on all things around youth empowerment, equality, diversity, development, and sustainability, framed under the Sustainable Development Goals. Too many sustainables for me to read out. She's also been recognized as one of the top 50 most inspiring, prominent, and influential Black voices in UK tech by Tech Nation, and also nominated as one to watch, which I definitely believe she is, by the Northern Power Women. Most recently, Elsa has been appointed as one of the youngest independent council members at the University of Salford in Manchester. So here is the recording for Dr. Elsa, who couldn't be with us today.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Dr. Elsa Zikeng, and I am director at Job Seekers. Now, Job Seekers is a careers platform that mitigates unconscious bias at the sourcing and screening stage of recruitment. If you have a brain, you have an unconscious bias, and that would play out, or that could play out in very different ways. That could affect different minority groups, that could affect neuroatypical people, and that could affect people who just not look like yourself. So today, I really want to champion us in choosing to challenge our systems, choosing to challenge our systems at work, choosing to challenge ourselves, challenging our own unconscious bias, and how we are, because we are human, we tend to hire like people, like hires like, so we tend to hire people who are like us. Choosing to challenge our systems, choosing to challenge our institutions, and choosing to go against the grain, but most importantly, speaking up, empowering women to speak up, empowering people of diverse backgrounds to speak up. once you hire people or you're in a space or you work with people who do not look like yourselves, yes, that represents diversity, but should they not feel included, it's the if they're not included, or if they do not feel included, it is almost a waste of talent and really an increase in frustration from the people who are within those spaces. So as we continue to advocate for diversity, advocate for inclusion, let's make sure that it's from a place of authenticity. Let's make sure that we are walking the walk and not just doing lip service. And let's make sure that everybody feels that they have a place where they can be 100% themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Elsa. I'm sorry that you couldn't be here with us, but your message came across loud and clear. And it's the consistent message that we had from all three women in the spotlight today, that it's about speaking up as well as being tenacious and not giving up. So thank you for that. That was truly inspirational. We are going to move on now and have our keynote speaker for today. And again, I don't want to miss anything, so I am going to cover everything in her profile. Our keynote speaker for today is Parveen Ashraf, aka the Spice Queen. Parveen is passionate about culture as well as cuisine. She has 30 years of experience in the world of Indian cuisine and wrote her first book, Parveen the Spice Queen, followed by her first ITV series, Parveen's Indian Kitchen. Parveen focused on her dream of being a TV chef and believed that her humble beginnings in Bradford gave her a solid start in life. She's a wife, a businesswoman, mother of 3 adult children. You wouldn't believe it when you look at her. She's amazing. She left the corporate world after having a tumor. She turned her passion into business and believes that where there's a will, there is a way. Parveen, we look forward to hearing what you have to share with us now. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I have to say, I'm in awe of the speakers so far, but the message is strong. There's some amazing women of colour doing amazing things out there, Barbara. But thank you so much to yourself and Mayank for inviting me to the event. So before I begin, I was looking at the themes for this International Women's Day and celebrating women of colour, which I do. I go into schools and I give talks about diversity. And there's pockets of England where I've given speeches and talks, and I'm probably the first Asian person or Muslim person that those children have seen. It's interesting because we talk about unconscious bias, and the teacher would say, "Oh, Mrs. Ashraf, we won't let them ask you anything that will embarrass you." And I said, no, let them ask me anything they want, because the more I talk about race and gender and women in business and being of colour, the more we're going to break down those barriers. The second is choose to challenge. And I think the phrase for this year for International Women's Day is amazing, because sometimes you do choose to challenge and sometimes you choose not to challenge. And it's about choosing your battles. We're not winning the war. We're battling all the time. And before I did this, I spoke to my son and I said, what about gender bias? And my son is a 23-year-old electrician, hoodie kind of dude, kind of guy. And he said, Mom, he said, I respect women because of the way you raised me. And that's the first time he said that to me. And that was quite humbling for me. And my elder son is the same. So in terms of gender bias, I have my son's 31 and my daughter's 29 and my youngest is 23. I've raised my 3 children in the same way as much as I possibly can, so that there's a mutual respect for one another. And it goes both ways. So I believe change is happening. We've still got a long way to go. We really have. But I believe change happens from the inside out and not outside in. Things like white papers, policies, procedures, they're nothing if they're not implemented. Change happens in every household. Every time a parent has a conversation about race or gender with their child. So for me, gender bias begins in the home. And I believe raising my sons to respect women and to have a mutual respect and understanding for women is a key thing. And only my son said it last night, so that was number one. So yes, I do talks, I have a blog, I did an ITV show, but it wasn't always like that. It took me a long time to find my authenticity, as somebody earlier said. And what is authenticity? If you Google the word authentic, and actually the synonyms are genuine, bona fide, and true. So that's exactly what I want to present to you. Everything I say is genuine, bona fide, and true, and it comes from a heart space and not a head space. So I remember, I think, not having a voice, not feeling good enough, feeling too brown, feeling too Muslim, feeling like a second-class citizen. That's because I was raised in the 70s. Now, listen, I'm going to go back to the beginning, but there is a method to my madness. I am going to talk about 1965 when I was born. And this is a key part of my story and something that only came to my realization about 5 years ago. So I was a premature baby and I was born in an incubator. So I don't know if anybody knows, maybe the doctor, if she was here, would tell us what they did with babies in the 60s in an incubator. Well, they did nothing. You were not held, you were not cuddled. There was no such thing as skin to skin in those days. So I was left in that incubator to survive. And my mother would say, and we have a member, Farah Qureshi, she knows my mother. My mother said, "You're a strong Parveen. You survived in the incubator because you have a strong spirit and a strong heart." And those words never really left me. And I always knew inside I had this inner strength. Whether I would challenge anybody or vocalize that was a different story, because the 70s was a different world. Racism was rife, and it was overtly racist. Even the media and the TV shows that we were subjected to and probably conditioned to watch, didn't sort of advocate any kind of beauty or power or intelligence to women of color. So as an Asian brown Muslim girl growing up in Bradford, I never felt my worth. I never thought I could do anything. I had never any ambition. And then the biggest challenge for me wasn't outside influences of the way the school was, the system, probably my father. My father, God, I adored him. He was this huge, big chap. I just adored him. All I wanted to do was please him. But I remember he was very traditional in his ways. And I always sort of came second best to my brothers. And I never liked it, but I never challenged. However, when I came to adulthood and I was about 17, my father had arranged a marriage for me. I felt this inner voice, this incubator baby, this strength from the inside saying, no, this is not for me. I challenged my father and I said, I will not marry a man that I don't know. I want to marry a man that's going to let me cut my hair, let me wear skirts. I'm going to have a married man who lets me be me. I remember my mother saying to me, "Oh, Parveen, you won't find a man like that." And I said, I did find a man like that. And he was pivotal when I married him. But I remember my mother saying to me, "Oh, Parveen, you have to learn to cook." I'm thinking, I don't learn to cook. I was very creative. I loved baking and art and drawing, but I wasn't a fan of cooking. And my mother said, "If you can't cook, you're never going to find a husband." Well, little did she know that is not how I found my husband. But probably that's how I kept him. So I got married, and breaking all the stereotypes and breaking away from my father's tradition and family tradition, and marrying of choice was a huge deal. Even though he was Pakistani and Muslim and actually from the north, it was still a huge thing for me to challenge. But I had this little inner voice thinking, no, this is not for me. And when I married him, life changed. I moved to London, and it was a fantastic cosmopolitan melting pot of different cultures, religions, and I sort of really enjoyed that aspect of living in London. I still had no real ambition, never knew what I really wanted, other than that I was chatty and I could cook a bit. That's the two skills I thought I had. And probably it was conditioning growing up. My father and my mother just never really allowed me to dream big, so I never dared to dream big because I thought there's no point. Got married, had 3 children, and then moved to Peterborough, and then life changed again when I moved to this small city. I got a job in a nursery, and I remember there was a time in my life growing up, I didn't want to be brown. I didn't want to be Muslim. I didn't enjoy my culture. And my background, my heritage, it was something that I shied away from or almost rebelled against. And then here I was going for a job interview in inner city Peterborough, and everything I was came into play. The fact I could speak Urdu, Punjabi, I could speak to the layperson, I could speak to the inspectors, I could speak to the governors. I got the job on the spot, and I got this job, and I got this nursery, and I took it from here to here to here. And the way I did that is, I don't know if anybody remembers Sure Start, but I was instrumental in the first round of Sure Start, which is a government initiative by the Labour government at the time. And I remember thinking, do you know what, I can do something with this nursery on my personality. And the fact I was chatty and I could cook a little bit, but the fact I could sort of talk to anybody regardless of who they were. And I took the nursery and I ran with it. We became the best nursery in the area. I then was instrumental in securing £2.4 million worth of funding for that particular area, and we got the funding. And that was the first thing. I knew that I had some power. I felt valued, and I felt the first time in my life I was in the right place at the right time to run this nursery, and all my skills came into play, and I suddenly celebrated everything that I was fighting against when I was younger. Then my life changed again. It's still not knowing what I really wanted to do with my life, apart from that I was quite a chatty person and I enjoyed people. I had really good people skills. But I remember the gender bias in every job I got. One particular job, I remember I got a job in the Observer newspaper as a copywriter, and all the women, we got a real memo in those days, a real memo saying you had to wear skirts. That would never happen now. All the girls had to make the tea. There was always this slight, women were treated differently to men, and I never liked it, but I never spoke up and I never challenged, not thinking I had any power to challenge anybody. I got a job at Ofsted. I was the first Muslim inspector of East Anglia, and that was a wonderful job. But again, I loved the job, and there was some unbiased, I would say it was racism, and I was bullied by my line manager, and it was small things. I could never put my finger on it. But did I challenge? No, I didn't challenge. I didn't feel I could challenge, because I still, that little brown girl keeps coming to the forefront, thinking, well, who am I? Have I got any self-worth? And I probably didn't have any self-worth. And so I sort of went through life, and then everything changed when I got a job for Austin, and I was inspecting Luton. I had 3 young children, and my husband's job was doing from strength to strength. I got a tumour, and life stopped. Everything went into slow motion. I remember thinking, why me? You know, I'm a good person. I didn't deserve this. And after the 3rd or 4th lot of surgery, I remember thinking, I never want to go through this again. And it was quite traumatic at the time. And actually, the tumour was growing inside me. My son Cyrus was only about 12 at the time. We gave it a name. We called it Simon, because it would flinch inside me like this. And do you know what I did? As a young mother of 3 children working, I ignored it. I thought, I haven't got time to be ill. But actually, that tumour saved my life. It opened my eyes, and it opened my horizons, and it made me want to live life to the fullest. So coming out of the last lot of surgery, my husband said, that's it, Parveen. Don't stress yourself out with this. Just do what you love. And I said, love cooking for people and throwing parties, but I'm not fully trained, and I'm not a professional chef. He said, no, but you're good at it. So that's exactly what I did. I set up my company in 2008. And then, of course, what happened in 2008? The crash happened. All my clients cancelled their parties. My husband then, after a few years, lost his job. So it wasn't a good place to be. But I had this focus and drive. And I think what the tumour taught me is to live life. And that's exactly what I did. I then set my company up. I just would ring everybody. You know, I'll have life's a journey, and every job I'd had led me to this point. I was so used to cold calling, working at the Observer newspaper. I would just ring people, say, hi, yes, I'd like to be on TV and I can cook. And I literally would just cold call. And every time I got a no, I just went to the next call. Every time I got a no, I went to the next call. Every time I fell down, I just got up. I had real faith. And maybe that incubator baby inside was saying, you've got this, Parveen. So after 10 years of networking, I did NLP to help me presentation skills. I did a styling course. I worked in a shopping TV. You know, the person that stands there saying, hi, you want to buy this, and fill their space on a shopping TV. That was me. Luckily, I lived in Peterborough, and there was a shopping television. So I learned my craft, and I've invested a lot of time and energy in what I was doing. And I'm a positive person as well. However, it was tough. There was so much networking, so much no's. You think an Asian woman that cooks, I'm being authentic, but it was much more than that. It was still a difficult journey, and there was lots of no's. But I did lots of motivational speaking, and somebody said to me, "Oh, Parveen, there's a phrase, it's fake it till you make it." So I would then announce I was a TV chef, but I didn't like that phrase, fake it till you make it. So I've got a new phrase. I had faith it till you make it. So I had real faith in myself, in my abilities. I had acting lessons. I then did brush up on presentation skills. I learned my craft. I then wrote a local column. And anywhere there's a networking event, I was there, networking my little butt off. I'd kissed so many networking frogs to get where I am today. But along my journey, the right people came in at the right time. I'm a massive fan in manifestation. So I manifested it. But do you know what? After 10 years of doing the job, I wasn't really getting anywhere. I did a little show called Come Dine With Me. Don't know if you've heard of it. And again, we're filming, and somebody said, "Oh, Parveen, if you want to be anywhere in TV, just be nice." So I thought, okay, I'll be nice. And then one of the participants was racist. She said to me, "Parveen, you're a PAKI." And I said, yes. She said, "Oh, well," and she was very derogatory about my culture and my background. So I didn't say anything. I thought, shall I challenge it? No, I want to be in TV, so I didn't challenge it. Even when I was younger, I remember there's a guy at school I fancied. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, and I sat next to him at home ec, and he said, "Oh, Parveen," he says, "you smell right for a PAKI." So I just went, "Oh, thanks," thinking it's a compliment. I didn't even challenge it then. So it took me such a long time to find my voice, to find my worth, to find my power. So I didn't challenge growing up. And even when I was challenged, even when this woman was swearing at me and calling me these names during filming, I didn't challenge. I thought, no, I want to be in TV. But the rest of the participants complained. She said, "Parveen, we're not uncomfortable with the words she's calling you." So Channel 4 rang the producers and said, "They're not going to show it on Channel 4, Come Dine With Me." And you know what? I wish they'd had. I wish they'd had shown the kind of bigotry and things that we face on a daily basis. Still didn't challenge, still didn't find my real true voice. So after 10 years of networking and cooking and setting barges on street corners, not getting anywhere, ringing people saying, "I'm going to be on TV," I had such focus, and people call it tenacity. I don't know. I think I could see it. I could see myself on TV if nobody else could. So I just did the job, and then I hit 50 and I thought, okay, not happening. I've hit 50. Nobody's going to want a 50 Muslim Pakistani woman on TV cooking. My mother was ill in hospital, so I'd gone to see her, and she was in hospital. And as I walked into the ward, I remember the nurses just smiling at me. And I said, "Mum, why are the nurses smiling at me?" She said, "Oh, I've shown them your tutu thing." I said, "Really?" And this is the first time I saw something in my mother's eyes, and it was pride. Pride in the woman I'd become. For somebody who didn't want me to cook for a living, who was frightened when I used to go out and do catering, come back at 3 a.m. with a van full of pots and pans to wash. She feared for me. So she was very ill, and she said, "Oh, what's happening with the cookbook? Have you written your recipes? And what's happening?" I said, "Nothing, Mother. Nobody wants your stories or my recipes for our story." And she said, "Oh, don't give up." And I said, "Mum, it's not that easy to be a TV chef." She said, "But you know who you are, don't you, Parveen?" So I said, "Let me guess, Mum. I'm tired." She said, "You are that little baby in that bottle, in that incubator, and you survived." And she always said that every year to me, and I never knew the significance of it. And here's the thing about my mother. When she was telling me this and she gave me the inspiration to go forward, I didn't even know she was inspiring me. She said, "Don't give up." So I said, "No, sorry, Mum, I'm going to give up. I'm 50. Nobody wants me to be a TV chef. If it hasn't happened in 10 years, it's not going to happen." Even I can't deny that now. Even my positivity is failing. My rose-tinted sunglasses, as my husband thinks I wear them, were a murky grey now. It wasn't happening. So she said, "Promise me." And I said, "No, Mum, I'm not promising you." There she was, tubes everywhere. She had a Krispy Kreme donut and a cup of Costas. And I said, "Mum, you're diabetic." But the doctor had said, let her have anything she wants at this point, not knowing what that meant. After the third time she said to me, "Parveen, can you promise me you won't give up? Magic will happen." I said, "Mum, I'm a Muslim woman on TV. I'm going to get slated for not wearing a scarf or this, that, the other." She says, "Well, you know what? Those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter." So she says, "I know what you're about." And she said, "You are a strong woman. Promise me promised her. She died the following morning. I know, had I not made that promise to my dying mother, I never would be where I am today. She had a voice. She never vocalized. She didn't stand up for herself. She never challenged anything. But when she was on her deathbed, I think she had an epiphany. She had pure clarity where she was going or where she wanted me to go. So she left me with these words. She left me with the inspiration to go forward. 6 weeks after she died, I got the book deal. A year after she passed, I got the TV show. And I remember, and everything, the first thing I did as an author is I wrote the book, and my publisher said, now I want you to do the acknowledgement, Parveen. And I'm thinking, I haven't written the whole book yet. She said, acknowledge. So I wrote the acknowledgement and I thanked my mother, and I had to write it in the past, which was very difficult, but it's dedicated to my mother. And then I remember walking into the TV studio, into my kitchen, there was images of my mother and her food and the stories, and I was overwhelmed by everything. And my producer took me aside. She said, Parveen, talk from your heart. When you're cooking, look in the screen and talk from your heart, and then you'll engage with the audience. So everything I do, everything I am, I owe to her, because she was inspired me. But as a woman of color growing up, I remember seeing things. She never challenged it. I didn't challenge it as a young lady, as a young woman, but I found my voice. I see my daughter, third generation. Oh, goodness me. She would challenge. I was walking into a store in the 70s in Bradford. I walked in and 3 women just looked at me, and I did a heel turn, walk straight back out again, thinking I'm too brown to be here, never knowing my self-worth. So it's ironic that everything that I was fighting against in my youth, my culture, my heritage, my religion, being a woman of color, I now am an advocate for that. The show did incredibly well. I was overwhelmed with comments on my Instagram and Facebook. And one thing I did not expect was the amount of support I got from women of color, from the South Asian community, from Bangladeshis, from Pakistanis, from Gujaratis. The show went to Australia, France, Germany, India. And I get emails saying, Parveen, you remind me of our mother, and you've reconnected us with our heritage through food. So I'm so proud to be a woman of color, to be a woman in business. And it's not been tough. I mean, it has been tough. And every time I fought, I just got up and carried on, knowing that I wanted to do this. I am now on a world stage. I now represent women of color in a positive light. If some schoolgirl where I'm doing a talk can see me be a businesswoman, a wife and a mother, and think she can do it, I can do it, I've done my job. I'm off to Nepal. I've got the most amazing opportunities to work with girls that have been abused. So I'm going to use all my skills and talents to help these girls. So I'm in a privileged position now, but now I've found my voice. If I see bigotry, if I see racism, if I see gender bias, I find my voice and I do choose to challenge. Thank you.
Parveen, I
Sorry,
genuinely am so touched by your story. And as you know, it's not the first time I've heard your story. We know each other.
It still happens.
It still happens. I never cease to be moved and inspired by what you're saying. Not in a way that leaves any of us sad or sorry, but in a way that makes us even more focused on, as you said, finding our voice, being our authentic self, and doing what your mother encouraged you to do, Parveen, which was don't give up.
No,
and sometimes it's hard.
It is, and even now, I'm on my second cookbook,
yeah.
And the world, unfortunately, is filled with white Caucasian male TV chefs. But I've got that drive, that little voice has come out now, and she's not going to give up until she gets there. But it's about representing women of color over 50 in a positive light, and that's my job. That's what I feel, Barbara.
Oh, thank you so much, Parveen. The comments are going crazy. Everybody was saying how inspiring you are. We really do thank you for being so open, so honest, and so vulnerable with us today.
Yeah, it happens every time, Barbara.
Story. Thank you so much, Parveen.
Thank you.
We will move on now to the panel discussion. And it gives me great pleasure now to introduce another 3 amazing women. This has just been such a great event, and it's not even finished. I'm going to read out their details all at the same time, and then the panel will come on and we will start to have some discussion and some questions as well. So the first of our panelists is India Gary Martin, a woman that I've certainly heard a lot about over the years, and I'm only just having the privilege to meet. India is a 25-year veteran of financial services and a member of the Forbes Coaches Council. She's held several global C-suite roles, including expatriate assignments in London, Frankfurt, Tokyo, and Hong Kong. In her final role at JP Morgan, India was Managing Director and Global Chief Operating Officer for Investment Banking Technology and Operations based in London. She is now the principal of Leadership for Life, LLC, a leadership consulting practice that advises global CEOs and their leadership teams based in Washington. India is the first of our panelists. Next, we have Janvi Patel. Janvi is an entrepreneur, a female founder, and an activist for women and children's rights. Janvi is a founding board member of the legal campaign Free Periods, which aims to end period poverty, and of the support Send Kids, which aims to support the educational needs of Send children. Need to put my teeth in. She is also a member of Equality Now and of the Children of War Foundation. Janvi graduated from the University of Manchester, Law and Accountancy, a BA, from the University of Law for her LPC. She's trained and qualified at Charles Russell, now CRS, into CR's employment team, and then moved in-house to Nortel as a senior employment lawyer. Janvi was awarded an honorary degree from the University of Law in the UK in 2019. Janvi joins our panel as our second panelist. And third, but by no means last, Kanchana Raman. Kanchana has been an entrepreneur for 25 years. None of these women look as if they've done anything for more than 10 years. That's the first thing to take away. But for 25 years, she has launched several companies over the years. She founded Avion Systems in 1996 and built an organization with extensive knowledge of the ICT industry. In 2003, Kanchana formed ASI in India to service India and EMEA. In 2014, Kanchana's role was in the final development and management of the current mobile networks and their planned transformation into the next generation cloud-enabled, virtual and software-driven networks. Even reading that is complex, so I can't wait to hear all about this. Kanchana also has held several board positions: Telecommunication Industry Association, Emory University, and the list goes on. So many wonderful things. The final thing I would say is that Kanchana holds an MBA from I can't pronounce this, Goethe Business School and Emory University, and also executive training from Kellogg's Business School. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia, with her husband, daughter, and her son. And we thank all 3 of you. Please unmute your mics. We thank all 3 of you for being here this afternoon. And we're looking forward to hearing what you're going to share with us of your experiences. And I'd really like to kick off with a key question that probably wasn't on the questions that I sent you, but I have poetic license to be able to stray a little bit from the agenda. Having listened to the 3 women and our keynote speaker today, what strikes you most in terms of a common theme that's come through from what they've been saying? I'll start with Kanchana.
I think the common theme basically is, we need to do things in a hurry, right? I mean, there's been a lot of talk, let's walk the talk, and, why wait, right? Why not today? So, again, I really love what Parveen said about being the best version of yourself, right? So for me, everything is about today. I don't want to wait for tomorrow. And I think that's been a consistent theme, and of course, choosing to challenge, I think globally, right? It's like all of us, right? Every day we wake up and we want yesterday, and we want to challenge who we are, what we have done, and can we do more? Can we do more? Can we pay it forward?
Thank you, Kanchana. And India, what's your view on what you got out of what you've heard so far today?
So as soon as you asked the question, it flew at me, resilience. Resilience was like the underlying theme for me, and power, because, it's kind of being able to do despite. And I think that is, for me, that choose to challenge the theme of International Women's Day this year really, really, really supports the resilience and power that women have, all of which we've seen this morning.
Absolutely. And
we're
going to hear this afternoon for us, but this morning for you. Yes, very much so. What about you, Janvi? What would you say?
I mean, I have to say, I was in tears in the last one as well. As soon as she paused and she was about to cry, I was like, oh no, don't, I'm going to cry too. But I think for me, the message I have been hearing is, just find what you love and what you want to do. And one of the things, while I'm thinking about that, I think, you really have to take care of yourself. And my motto this year has been, you cannot give what you do not have. So if you don't have the energy and the drive and the passion, you cannot give that out. Mm-hmm. And you have to take care of yourself first. And when the speakers did that, they just excelled in what they love. And then they were able to give more and do more. And I think it was really empowering to hear how they'd gone through their journey of the struggles and trying to figure out what it is that they wanted to do. And I think that takes time. I mean, I'm just trying to figure that out now. And so it takes time to figure out what you love to do. But once you find that, then you can give. But it takes time to take care of yourself and understand that for yourself to be able to put that out. So I thought it was fascinating from all the speakers to be able to go through that journey with them.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much for that. Absolutely. I think all three of you have identified some of the key things that certainly for me and other people on this webinar have been saying in the chat, that sometimes it is about just that undeniable focus, staying with what you think you are capable of doing and believing in yourself, which isn't always easy, is it, in reality? I'd ask India. It's easy to say, but sometimes very challenging to actually live up to that standard for yourself. Share something about your experience of having to do that.
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting? I mean, I think that the turning point for me in being able to kind of, again, stand in my own power and be able to kind of move forward was understanding that it wasn't me who needed to be fixed. Mm-hmm. Actually, all of the environmental and societal messaging we get kind of affirms that we shouldn't be doing X, or that we're not in a position to do, and the images do not support our success. I mean, that's starting to shift now, but again, as a kid, growing up in the 70s, very similarly, some others, those weren't the messages that we received, and particularly as a woman of color. And so when I recognized that actually what needs to be fixed is them and not me, and the processes and systems and not me, I was able to, it really was the turning point in terms of my ability. I gotta stop moving because you're losing me. It was a turning point in terms of my ability to be able to kind of know that I was good enough. It didn't matter what the messaging said. What mattered was how I showed up, being really clear about who I wanted to be. I mean, when I think about my corporate career, I thought at a point that I wanted to be, this person in the corner office doing all these things. But the reality is, when we're all kind of gone And, you know, in my religion, we bury and have tombstones, right? What do I want to say? Do I want to say I worked at JP Morgan and killed myself? No. You know, that I was the best worker, but JP Morgan never had. No. You know, what I wanted to talk about is who I am as a person. And I had to recognize that that actually is what you lead with. What you lead with is who you are, and who you want to be to the world. And again, when I recognized that that it wasn't about me being fixed, and it was about a broken world and that did not recognize my value, it made it all different and better. And it was the shift.
Yeah. And Janvi, just picking that up a little bit from what you were saying earlier about recognizing that you have to take care of you, there's certainly some similarity with what India is saying. So what has been your experience and what led you to get to that stage where you said, look, I've got to put myself first?
Oh gosh, I think I'm still going through, that stage. I think for me, I mean, I came from a traditional Indian background with 70s children. And so I came from a traditional Indian background, first generation in the UK. And so, I mean, I wasn't quite in the arranged marriage, but not far from it. And so I was just very clear that I didn't want to be that person, to the point that I didn't actually learn how to cook, because I knew as soon as I learned how to cook, that was going to be a role that I would play. And to this day, I do not cook. I make it a point of, if no one's cooking, it's not me. And so because it's a very, and now it's a thing, right? Because now everyone cooks apart from me, so everyone knows. But I think one of the things that I've kind of thought about a lot is, even when I was younger, when I was doing I don't want to cook and I don't want to be, you know, staying at home. And there's just something that made me rebel, and I would just get anxious. And when I get anxious, I want to do something. And I then spend time, even as a young kid, I used to spend time going, what is it that I want to do? And I try and find, honestly, my tribe that can help me do the things that I want to do. So now when I'm trying to think about what I want to do, having come out of, we sold our business about a year ago. We sold our business a couple of years ago and finished the exit last year. I then sat again and thought, what is it that I want to do? Do I now want to spend time with my kids because I, you know, was working throughout while they were babies? Do I want to spend time? Do I want to learn how to cook? Like, what is it that I want to do? And I've just found my new space of, I want to give back. I have space in my life. I want to find areas of inequality that I can address. Whether it's for special educational needs for special needs children, or for the menstrual products, or for different areas of equality. And honestly, for me, it was just finding time in my own headspace to go, what is it? And I feel like unconsciously I did that over the years, whether it was when I finished the law firm, and there was just so many reasons why, you know, same with JP Morgan, I didn't want to be a partner of a law firm. I didn't want to be in that mix of middle-aged white men and having to fight for dropping my kids off to school. I didn't want to be in that mix. And so, but even at that moment, I just sat and thought, what is it that I want to do? And sometimes I didn't have an answer. I just thought, I don't want to be here. So let me leave and figure something else out, and be able to take those steps. But it takes time. I mean, and I think at each point we work hard. So sometimes you have to just go, I'm not doing anything today. I'm not working today. But to give yourself some space to be able to go, what is it that I want to do? Yeah. This is a very long way of answering the question. Sorry.
No, that's a brilliant answer. Thank you. And what I'm picking up from it as well is something that I want to ask Kanchana about. And that is that point at which you say, I'm going to challenge what people expect from me and actually focus on what I want to do. Yeah. For many women, that is a big ask. You know, the indoctrination and the upbringing teaches you to be compliant and you know, follow a particular role. Tell me about how you broke out of that mold and what happened, Kanchana. What happened for you to be in that different space?
Well, I was, you know, my dad is, you know, he was a professor. So in my house, education was everything, right? It's like but I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, even when I was 16, right? But they just wouldn't let me. I think many people can relate to that. It's like, okay, go get a degree and then do whatever you want. So I had to kind of pay my dues, in school, college, university. And when I got a job, I couldn't stay in corporate America past 2 years. So I think it's like, you're pushed to a corner, right? And this is something you don't want to do. You want to break away from it. And that's what happened to me. So I was like, okay, you know what? I can't take this rigor. And again, I didn't want to be boxed in, right? I had that creative energy. I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more with my time and do more with the economy and the opportunities that are available. So when I started in '96, it was a .com, which most of, probably many of them were in high school or in middle school when it happened. But for me, it was the timing, right? There was like you're reading about everybody going out there, getting VC funding, starting companies, and being successful. And somehow I was only reading the successful stories, which I think was a good thing. When you sit at a table with winners, the conversation changes. So I was reading all this positive press coming my way, and I said, you know what? Why don't I jump in and do something as well? So it was. I wouldn't say I didn't expect where I'm going to be today. It was more of a humble beginning and something I wanted to do. But I guess the timing was good. And then, of course, a lot of hard work, good networking, good mentoring that got me here 25 years. I'm still around 25 years later. So,
so inspirational. It's absolutely fantastic. We're just going to change tack slightly for a couple of moments, because one of the things we wanted to do was get people who are listening in to have an opportunity to just at least comment. So we have a poll question that we're just now sharing on the screen, which says, to the audience as well as to you, what do you think is the biggest challenge in relation to gender bias and inequality right now? And there are some options there. Is it culture and tradition? Is it educational levels and literacy? Is it inequality in employment and earnings, or is it something else? So we're just going to give hosts and panelists, so you can vote as well, ladies, as to what you think these questions, and then we will share the results. We'll just give it a few seconds for people to vote. I don't know if Prina or Carolina want to give me an indication. Here we are. Here we are. I don't know if everybody can see this on the screen, but my screen is saying that the majority of people have gone for inequality in employment and earnings. So because that's come up as the top answer, I'd like to ask you, and I'll go back to Janvi again, I'd like to ask you about that experience and that view that it is about inequality in earnings and opportunities. And what would you say in response to that?
I mean, I think it's such a big, I have to say, I think all of those are the yes,
yeah.
right? All of them, right? But I think from, in my world, I think the inequalities within employment are just huge. And I think as much as I feel there are movements being made, the stats are still pretty awful. And so especially in professional services, especially at the senior end of the market, I think that is still very much the case. And for us, what we did within the legal space was try and blow up the traditional model a bit and create a new model that was much more inclusive. But I think definitely the inequality in the pay gap, not just women, but minority women have even less. If you see access to opportunities, see how many women there are on board, how many women from a minority are on boards, it is still pretty shocking. So I would absolutely agree that the inequalities within our workspace is just huge. And I think COVID has made it even worse, right? I mean, the figures, I don't know if anyone's seen the Sherry Blair Foundation figures, but the effect of COVID within the workforce for women is in the 80% of women, the number of people affected, 80% are about women. And so that is going to have a massive knock-on effect. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think it is a real struggle, especially within mainstream work, to the inequalities absolutely exist.
Yeah, And I think the McKinsey report has similar findings as well, particularly about the impact of COVID.
Yeah.
So India, hearing that and knowing that people on this call are saying it is about inequality of pay and inequality of opportunities, we're surely in 2021 at a stage where we should be moving the dial on this. Something should be changing by now. What would you say if somebody came to you and said, right, you know, you can have all the resources in the world that you want, you can do anything you want. What do you want to do to move the dial on this? What would be your response?
That's an interesting one, right? Because again, you know, it kind of so often the responsibility is laid with the folks who are most impacted, which is always nothing to me. I'm kind of like, how does that work? And but here's the thing. I always kind of use this analogy, right? So let's just say that you were playing. I'm just going to use it as sport. Let's say you were playing hockey. Okay, you're playing hockey, and you've been playing hockey for 25 years, right? And then you look over and realize that your opponents didn't have hockey sticks, but they still managed to win sometimes. What then is your incentive to give them hockey sticks?
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, and again, I think it's a subconscious thing. And we're talking when we talk about pay equity, and we talk about all of the inequity that exists for all underrepresented groups, and, you know, being at the intersection of a couple of those anyway, that's always kind of the scenario that plays out, right? And as Janvi said, the numbers are horrific. And if we don't take very substantial action very quickly, we are being set back by decades.
Yeah.
When you look at the numbers of women who have had to leave the workforce over the past year because women are primary caregivers, and, you know, all of the issues around school. And actually, what was really interesting, and in the law, Janvi, I literally just did something with a law firm a couple weeks ago. The rate of promotion of men increased over that period of time. It was really interesting. And so, you know, when we talk about the issues and how you solve for that, you know, it is complex, because if we could, we would have already. There is movement that was happening. You know, there was movement that was starting to happen a bit more. But the worry is, you know, now we have compounded issues. Underrepresented groups are now starting to demand that it be different, which is great. We've been given voice that we didn't have before. And I think that folks are kind of like at a point, and I'm talking again across gender, race, whatever it might be, or at a point now where it's like, what do we have to lose, right? Because we're going down so quickly, we don't have anything to lose. So we have to use our voices to demand the equity that we deserve. And I think we're moving in the right direction by publishing some of it. But the reality is, if you don't do the work inside of the organizations, you know, people behave as the container creates. Unless you change the container, you're going to get the same outcomes.
Can I do you mind if I just add something to
jump in, yeah.
So one of the things that I think about, and I agree with what India's already said, but one of the things I think about a lot is how laws have really shaped our society, and I talk about it quite a lot. Companies didn't give maternity leave because they wanted to out of the generosity of their own heart. They did it because the law required them. And actually the UK only did it in the 80s, and only because Europe made them do it. So the UK was kicking and screaming about maternity rights, as they were about holiday pay, as they were about sick pay, all the other benefits that we now take for granted. And so I genuinely believe, and I've thought about this really hard, about having quotas in government. Any companies that get government contracts, get government money, I think they should all be required to have 50% quotas. And I think if we did that, they would start thinking about their supply chain of candidates. And at the moment, there is no urgency other than maybe your market asks for it or your client asks for it. But if you look at the 30% Club and what they have tried to do, I can't remember the number of years they've been going, but I would say like nearly a decade. 2009. There you go. Yeah, thank you, India. They have barely moved the dial, and this is like a powerful group of women and lobbyists who are on this, together with the Davis report and all the others. They have barely moved the dial, and I think unless we get quotas, no one's going to move. We don't do this out of the goodness of our heart, because otherwise the powerful will lose their power, right? They're not going to do that. So I mean, I think what we really need is some level of a a law, and it doesn't have to be across every business, because I get, there's some small businesses that might not want it, but anyone who gets a government contract at that level should be required to have a 50-50 split.
Yeah, that's an interesting suggestion, because it's something that goes backwards and forwards here in the UK. It doesn't really apply for the States so much, but certainly in the UK.
They've done a good job over here, I should say. Everything
it does.
has been implemented, pretty much here stateside. So
yeah.
When we made a trip in 2008 to London, and we were going, from one organization to another government organization, rooting for something similar to mirror what we had done.
What we had in the States, yeah, definitely. So just continue a little bit on that theme for me, please, Kanchana, and just talk about, India is saying, it shouldn't be the people who are affected that then have to come up with a solution. Janvi is saying there ought to be some sort of legislation. What's your position on what can be done differently going forward, especially if it's not going to rely necessarily on women to be at the forefront of it?
So I'm going to kind of look internally and not rely on outside forces, right?
Yeah.
So when we asked the question, I see that most people said inequality in employment and earnings. So I'm just trying to see how can we fix it as an individual, right?
Yeah.
For me, in that question, it was all of the above, right? It's culture, tradition, education level, literacy. So when the generation that is working now between age 25 to 34, whether you call them millennials or much younger than that, the pay gap is much lesser, right? So, and that has that, and then the parity or the differences are becoming lesser and lesser in the workplace, and that is fixed by one of your education level and literacy, right? If women start investing in higher education, where right now the stats show that more women are going for advanced degrees, you upskill and you retool yourself wherever it's possible, right? Whichever level you are in. Say you've never been able to really go to college, but can you get that associate's degree, or can you get a specific certification that can help you? So and then again, culture and tradition, right? Many of us talked about coming from families. Many times you have cheerleaders in families, many times you don't. And the way I look at it, just get strong internally, have the confidence. Just say you're on an island by yourself, learn to love yourself, learn to say, you know what, I can do this. I don't need anybody's support. It's all within me. So I'm just thinking that, yes, we need the support from outside, but I think we need more support from ourselves, right? Just get that mental strength to fight. What is, what you cannot fight what you can change, but you have the power to change yourself, right? And step it up.
Can I just say one quick thing?
Yes, please.
I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of fighting. I don't know why I have to fight, and I'm not I hear your point, but I'm tired of fighting. And I don't think, and I think that, we also have to understand that there are situations where women don't have that option in the same way. So certain socioeconomic conditions mean that you can do certain things. For other people, you can't. And so it's not always about the inner fight. And I think inner strength is hugely important. And that centeredness, just as you were saying, Kanchana, is hugely important. But again, we don't control it all the time. And there are things that we can't control. And there are things that we can, and that's only ourselves. But that thing isn't necessarily going to move it. And I'm just, I have to say, I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting all the time. And I felt like I've been fighting my entire life, and I'm ready to not fight.
So I have to say that's one of the reasons why I stepped out of the legal field. I was tired of the fight, and it was constant and it was relentless. But I will say I think it was Shola that said it earlier today about how we always have to be better. I think it was her who said it. We always have to be better than everyone else, right? Yeah. And I think I'm tired of that. I want to win because I'm average like everyone else. I don't want to have to be the best at everything. Right? I don't want to have my A game every single second of every single day.
And who can do that, right?
And who can do that? And honestly, my average is pretty good. So, it's okay. But equally, I think between us as a community, not just obviously within MSDUK, but the community of women, the community of minority women, we have to give ourselves a break. So when I was pitching for work and some of the general counsels were women, minority women, they expected me to be better than all the other competition. And I get that they have to, go to their, they're also trying to prove their worth, right? And they're trying to kind of get to their level. But I think it's okay if we give each other a break and say, I will take a risk on you because you know what? I'm going to support my own because I think you're worth giving a go. You've woken up in the morning, spent 5 years working on this. I will give you a go. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay, right? We will support each other in this. The same way that all the men support each other, they all kind of have this nepotism thing going on. We could do it, right? And we are a powerful force if we did it together. So I know, like, we always we should do more and it's like, I'm tired. I don't want to do more. I just want to I want to have my tribe and I want to be able to do that within the tribe that I have. And I know that's controversial. So you don't have to agree with me, but I know that's controversial, but it is just like, why do I always have to go over and above everything? I don't think that's fair, right? So
I think Janvi, to your point, I have this beautiful quote that I wanted to share with all of you. It says, every woman's success should be an inspiration to another. We are strongest when we cheer each other on. And it was a quote from Serena Williams. And I thought, it is, to your point, right? That's exactly what we need to do. And, we're sometimes fighting for ourselves. Many times we're fighting for our tribe, like you said, for everybody, right? It's like if we silence ourselves and say, you know what, we have attained or we have gotten up the ladder, we don't need to do anything more, right? So I think it's a constant struggle. And again, like McKinsey said, we are about 100 years out, right? So if we just take it easy today, then what's going to happen to the rest of the generations that are coming? So I think that, that is something that's just food for thought for all of us,
Yeah. I'm very conscious of time and we're having a few people saying they're going off to meetings. So one of the things that I would like to do now is to just ask each of you to answer the same question, which is sticking a little bit with the theme that you got to there. So what do we say if we are these women of the 70s generation like Parveen? What do we now say to younger women who are also being encouraged to choose to challenge, particularly in this space of being an entrepreneur, getting into leadership positions, running your own business? What legacy do we leave for them to feel strong enough to take up that mantle and move forward? What's the one piece of advice you would each give? Janvi, to start with you.
I mean, I would go back to what I started with, was you cannot give what you do not have. You have to take care of yourself first. And once you've got yourself strong, you can then take care of everyone else. So whether that means in the kind of the small level of wake up and meditate and eat well and make sure you are happy and healthy, it could be that. Or it could be make sure you get to a point where you can support other people, whether that's financially or a position in a company, but once you get to that point, do give back, give back. And it's really important to get others coming up the ladder, pull them up with you, but take care of yourself. Take care of yourself first.
Thank you. Kanchana?
So the question was, what is the one piece of advice
you would give to an upcoming...
to the younger generation? Yes. So first of all, I would say that, we have made strides, right? There is a lot of great things that have happened. There is a lot of VC money out there, right? And they always say many women-owned businesses do not see past 1 year because of funding. So please know that, be bold enough to go make those pitches. And, if they say no, you can always go to another VC. There's only 2.8% that has been given to women-funded companies. So I would say just be confident, right? Don't be fearful of anything, whether, and again, for us as role models, every time I meet, I make a pitch or I meet a client, I feel like I should be the best version of a woman, right? So that the next generation that walks behind me is looked with respect, confidence, and they are able to get better opportunities than I did because I did the right thing. I was able to deliver on my promises. So I think that is what I would say is for us as role models to do the right thing. So we pave a good path for the future generations. And for the future generations is, invest in yourself, invest in education, invest in knowledge, add value wherever you go, right? It's just because you're a woman, nobody's going to hand you down anything, right? Just add value, be that force that can make a positive change for yourself and for everybody around you.
Thank you. India, what's your view? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I was the one who did that this whole panel. There's always one, and I always try not to be that person. But
I like it. Go for it. That's what we're here for.
So, no, I would say I go back to the beginning, what I said at the beginning, which is that you don't need to be fixed. Yeah, growth is important, but this isn't about fixing, and not to internalize the things that other people put on you that's theirs and not yours. And so I just say, grow and stretch, but you're not being fixed, you're developing.
Thank you so much. I'm wanting to give now the audience, if there are any questions. My colleague Carolina will join us now and let me know whether there are any questions for the panel from the audience. Carolina.
Hi, yes, we're waiting for questions to come. And the chat was absolutely active. A lot of messages of support, a lot of messages of thank you, and comments on points that were mentioned. One question that I would like to ask in the meantime is, what does International Women's Day mean to you?
Good question. Thank you. I'll go to India first. What does International Women's Day mean to you is the question.
Well, I will say this, every day for me is International Women's Day. So that's how I feel about it. So I'm celebrating every single moment, every single day, but if I had to choose, I would just say that it's a highlight of the strength, resilience, power, and truth that women have and tell. And so, and it's a reminder to me that we walk on the shoulders of giants, and that we too will become giants for somebody else if we carry on the walk that we know that we're put here to do.
Thank you. Kanchana, what does it mean to you?
I agree with India that it is, it is every day is International Women's Day, because we wake up every day and work so hard, and it's good to be recognized. And I think it's more about, creating awareness, right? At least that, in our everyday busy lives, there's a day we pause and say, you know what, let's do something better than what we did the previous year. So I think with every passing year, I see that the days become more, it is being celebrated more globally, and there is awareness created for us, for our gender, and I'm happy about that.
Thank you. Janvi, what about you?
I'm not sure I have much more to say. I feel like, I just think I feel like it's important to have a moment in time where we celebrate, those who have come before us, and the shoulders that we stand on, but also just to have a moment to think about what we have to do in the future and how we can make it better. And so one thing I do think a lot about, especially for the younger generation, is sometimes you think you wake up and this happened, right? That we were allowed to have bank accounts, that we were allowed to own property, that we weren't property, all those things, right? And so as much as, it's important to recognize the day and where we've come to, it's important to know that the journey that we've come through, and that for many, many people, not just in workspace, but in basic human life, of being able to own land and not being property, and having free access to education and who you marry and all those other bits, that journey is still ongoing. And so for me, I think about the past, where we are now, but also the future and things that we have to work on as a, I don't want to take the fight on for everyone. I get what you're saying. This is not everyone's fight.
I got the message. Take care of yourself first. I got it. Yeah, but in a sense, before I go to the questions, I can see that there are a couple that have come in. This year, the theme is about choosing to challenge. And however you are doing that as women on this panel, it's different, and there are also similarities. We really must focus on. So when we're not just having a day that's about this, but it's a way of life. What are we thinking then? And what does challenging look like? That was rhetorical. I'll give other people an opportunity to ask some questions. Over to you, please, Carolina, for the questions.
Yes, that might be a question for Janvi, actually. As a junior, I know you mentioned starting by looking after yourself, but how do you start to make a difference at a low seniority level? That's a question from Alicia.
In terms of looking after, looking after yourself, I think, honestly, when it's just you and you don't have a bigger family, or, you're working on your career, I think for you, it's important to have, just have time for yourself, make sure you eat well, you stay healthy, you do things that you enjoy, keep your hobbies going, like just take care of your mental and your physical self. I think as you get, you start kind of getting into more hours, more family commitments, all of that stuff, it is very easy, and we as women do it very fast, of just, we're the last one to eat. We're the last one to shower in the day. We're the last of all of it. And I think we have to make ourselves first. And I know it's not easy. I have been there, and it has not been easy, because you think, I've got all these other people plowing on me and I've got to get things done. But I have learned little techniques, like I block out time in my diary when I answer emails, and then I don't answer emails after that time. And I decide how many phone calls I'm going to make in a day, and then I don't take any more in that day. And I think as you get senior, you have more capacity to do that. When you're junior, it still might be hard. But as you get senior and then the pressures grow on your time, you can allocate it in a slightly different way. But, I have to say, I don't have all the answers. There are good days for me and there are bad days for me. And I cancel things because someone's sick or because I have to go somewhere. But I always try and give myself, for example, one day a week, I will take off like 2 hours and just do something for me. And it's not every day, but I will just go, and I've learned that from my husband. So he will work out no matter what, and he will always have like something nice once a week for him. And I think I learned that from him, because I wouldn't have done it for myself. So it's a struggle. I don't have all the answers for that, but you have to think about what you want to do. Thank you.
Carolina?
Yeah, I think we have more questions, and we will note them down and get in touch with you separately. But I think we're running out of time.
Probably just one more. I'm sure people won't mind us 2 minutes going over. One more question, and then we'll think about wrapping up.
Yes, then the one about workplace, continuing with this theme. How can we continue to make sure women have a voice in the workplace?
Do you want a bun fight about who answers, or shall I just pick someone?
Yeah, you can pick someone, Barbara.
Well, the first person I saw smiling at me as if she knew what she wanted to say was Kanchana, so I'll ask you.
I'm always smiling. So.
You look very expectant in to answer it, so go for it.
So the question was, what voice should women have in the workplace?
Yeah, how can we ensure that they have the voice? And it's
I think by, again, I'm going to go back to, by excelling in what you do, right? Once you excel in whatever role you're given, right? I think you garner respect automatically. Like if people start looking up to you, right? So you underperform and then you have a voice, then you look like, nobody's going to pay attention, right? It's just noise. But if you are an overperformer, overachiever, and you've done extremely well for yourself, I think you don't need a voice. The voice, your presence is already felt, right? And you have done well, and you can lift a few people along with you. I like I said, I don't have too much corporate experience. I've been in corporate for 2 years. I've been an entrepreneur 25 years in my life right now. But I think, again, in entrepreneurship, it's the same thing, right? If you are in cutting edge technology, if you have a product that excels and does better than everybody else, I don't think people are really looking at whether it's a female-owned company, male-owned company. They're looking at the product, they're looking at the service, they're looking at the deliverables. So I think I would focus on those things, and that's what I have done. I've been in a male-dominated industry for 25 years. It's wireless telecommunications. you know, how many women are around in that place. But I think I've never looked at myself in terms of being a woman, amidst all the men. I have focused on what I could deliver.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take liberties because I am the moderator, and I'm just going to give India a final opportunity to just, what's your overriding thought now, having been on this panel, listening to what's been said and the questions coming along? What's the overall riding thought in your mind about this day, what it stands for, and what we're doing about it as women? If you can do that in a few seconds.
I'll try to be as succinct as I can. I know what time is running. I just go back to the fact that, we are navigating a world that was not designed for us. And regardless of our will, it isn't always about our will, that it's really about often the conditions in which we find ourselves. And so what I always say to women, and what I will say in my final word is this: I talked about it not being about fixing. This is about navigating until. That's the skill that we want folks to have. Navigate until we have enough representation that the issues that we face, we don't have to face, right? And so in our lifetime, that might not be the case, but if we continue to navigate and we continue to push against the boundaries that exist and that were not driven by us, then we get to a point where eventually those boundaries aren't there for our daughters, just like people pushed for us so they weren't there for us. And so I just say navigate until. Learn to navigate, do not fix. Navigate, grow, continue, but also know that you are enough and that the conditions in which you find yourself are not of your making.
Wow, I want to say amen. So there are so many things that you have said today as panelists, so many points that I could pick up, but it would take even longer, and I am trying to be respectful of everybody's time. But all I want to do now is to just thank all three of you so much for a very stimulating, inspiring, and exciting discussion. It's given us all food for thought, and I think we should have had much longer. We could have done this for ages, couldn't we? So I will leave it there. I will hand over to Parikh for a second before we do the final elements and say thank you very much for your contribution today, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Vanessa Muñoz, and I'm the head of marketing and communications at MSDUK. And on behalf of everyone, I really want to say thank you to all our speakers today. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your powerful stories. We're truly inspired, and you can see it in the comments. The chat was amazing. Also, this event would not have been possible without the sponsorship of AstraZeneca and Google. Moreover, I want to thank our other sponsor, BX Merchandising. Thank you, because they have sent these beautiful notebooks to all our participants. And now, I also want to share with you events coming up at MSDUK. These events are some of the advantages that all our members get. First, we have on the 24th of March, the Virtual Business Opportunity Day. It's a great opportunity for businesses to meet with corporates, and a great event this time focusing on real estate, oil and energy, engineering, car rental, and logistics. Also, we have another event with one of our partners, Imperial College Business School. This is a program called Leadership in Technology, in a Technology-Driven World. The applications close this Friday. Please stay tuned. If you haven't seen this event, go to our website, go to our social media channels, click, and you can find information how you can apply. Then we have an event coming up, which is intellectual property. It's a crucial event for any early stage business owner. Come and join. This is open for absolutely everyone. You can see we have in the screen as well the opportunity for you to get in touch with us. You can send us a message on how to subscribe to this event as well. And once more time, thank you for being here, for being sensational, and thank you for choosing to challenge, because from challenges comes change. Thank you.